So yeah, that's how that goes. Found these bamboo storage containers. Bamboo, even if they're not, they look good, they sound good, they feel good to me, with the exception of the this bottom part, which is a little thinner than the rest of the walls. Totally suitable for screws and fasteners, whatever. But I did have to reinforce it with a fuck ton of hot glue. But basically, the inner guts here, real simple breakdown. DROK TPA 3116 amplifier board. Driving tube, Dayton Audio ND65 4 ohm drivers in parallel with two 1-inch power acoustic tweeters, which are driven in parallel with the main drivers but through series capacitors, filtering out all the lows. And I've also got 5K dual pot on here, trimming down both of them very slightly. So while this amp would prefer to not see a load lower than 4 ohms, it's not really seeing that with these in parallel. I'm running it all off around 16 volts here with the 4 18650s. This is a gift. I'm trying to keep it simple. The plan is power in or recharge is going to be a 19 volt laptop charger, which will go through here through a buck driver down there, which is a constant current driver, and it's set at 16.4 volts max, not quite the 16.8, but just for arbitrary safety concerns. I'm going to recharge them at 4.1 volts each for now until I get a protection board on here, and that buck driver is just going to step that down from 19 to 16.4 at 1 amp max to recharge those. One other addition is a low voltage cutoff circuit, which is going to cut the main battery from the rest of the system through a relay probably once it reaches 12 volts, 3 per cell. And it's going to cut it back on at 13 volts. That's the idea. But for now, how I'm doing this right here for testing and whatnot, recharging, that's totally fine. So that's the gist there. I've just added this main toggle here to disconnect the battery. That's just a main battery disconnect, which I've also got a just a little red LED I've ran through there through a resistor for a power indicator. But that's pretty much how that goes. And you can see these little these little boxes that I got that I've sandwiched together. They came with these little slotted drawers, so that kind of makes it handy to where you can compartmentalize this any way you want. I've essentially divided this down the middle, so each driver has half this area with only this one wall right here. And you know, once all latched together, that is the end result. So now, while I'm not gonna exaggerate and say this sounds mind-blowing, it sounds really good to me. Now there are very certain particular frequency ranges which I can tell this bamboo or whatever it is wants to resonate with a little bit, but it's not actually a big deal, and it's well worth the sacrifice for how this sounds to me. Now also, the reason I'm using it through this aux port, not USB, is because I found that, for example, like this guy that I was using in another build, which was recommended by another user on another popular video, I realized this wasn't reproducing bass properly compared to the hardwired, the hard connection, and for that reason I need to pick and choose my Bluetooth receiver better. But I'm waiting on a USB output port, which is going to go, probably right here, and that's got a voltage display on it. And what that's going to do is, when the proper Bluetooth receiver is found, that port's going to power the Bluetooth probably through a DC to DC isolation board, and then just short cable connect from there into there, and that's how that'll be Bluetooth. But that's pretty much the gist there. I actually damaged this one driver by putting a pinhole in the middle after I had it already in some kind of way. But I noticed that the little diaphragm or whatever that is it's a hard plastic material, so I figured that wouldn't be hard to reproduce. So I ended up just kind of sloppily putting some electrical tape over it with the thinnest layer of super glue I could. I can't noticeably tell the difference in how that reproduces sound, but at any rate, I don't like looking at it. Yeah, there you go. I really like these bamboo boxes. Another couple things, I've tried several amp boards, and here's another one. For example, I tried, this is a TDA 7297. Now this runs good from 12 volts. Gives off very warm, pleasing audio. I believe this is a Class AB amplifier. So while this runs pretty good from 12 volts, the reason I didn't use this is because it's not as efficient as the Class D amplifier in here. Which, let's see, I've got another one right here, which is actually one that Yico sent me again, because the first one they sent was not working. That's what it looks like in there. The first one actually did work, but for whatever reason the heat sink wasn't on there right, and the chip overheated, and even though it's supposed to have overload protection, for whatever reason that chip was just annihilated, and it just went into direct short anytime power was put to it. So if you use these chips, you want to keep in mind that the heat sinks that they come with, they've just kind of got, they're on there real chintzy with a little bit of super glue, and that's likely just going to pop off if you drive these at high volume from 24 volts. So that's one thing. You might want to replace that with a better one and make sure it stays on there. But that's the route I took for the amp, and I figured that's the better way to go, because since it is much more efficient, I haven't found the need to beef up any crazy capacity on here. So I've just got the four 3000, or I believe now 2600 milliamp hour cells in there. That runs totally fine. But the other important thing I thought about this was that little trimmer on the tweeters, because without that, these tweeters are basically going full blast at whatever they want to eat, and a lot of times I found that is just too piercing to the ears. A lot of times at max volume, when you've got really high frequencies, a hiss is much more audible, and you just want to trim that down a little bit. So what I do is I trim the tweeters down to the point where I can essentially just barely notice them. And when I do that, I can tell it adds a really nice sort of like a spatial ambience to the sound. But at any rate, I thought this was a real good material. I'll try to put a link to these particular ones. But I noticed they make different kinds. They make different kinds of these that are much larger. So I'm thinking about just finding a few more bigger ones, and I'm going to make another one of these for myself. But that one's probably I'm going to try to add some more things, maybe like a preamp. Little things like that. The only other thing is I've had a hard time sourcing speaker grills for these little guys, so I'm gonna have to use some speaker cloth I got coming to try to make my own some kind of way. But other than that, I thought this kind of went together to be a nice, real handy little deal. Serviceable, which is what I like the most about it. But yeah, if you ever run into any of these little bamboo guys, I'd say give them a try. Even if you just glue them together instead of latching them like I did, that might be better depending on your speaker. Actually, don't mind the lack of hermetic seal here, because I felt like at max volume, these little woofers are pushing so much freaking air. Sometimes I get concerned about the pressure that's going on in there. So the fact that there's a little bit of relief there, essentially with this vent along the seam, I don't know, there's more peace of mind, I suppose. And I know when I was testing this before with only electrical tape sealing it around, I couldn't tell the difference between how that sounded and how this sounded. So yeah, pretty pleased with that. Not bad.